Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining me. We have a interesting and fun and very important topic to discuss, and I say we this time meaningfully, not as royalty, because I have a special guest who will be joining me, a token expert actually. And but before I introduce him and bring him on, just let me give you a quick idea of what this topic is about and why it is so important. So, if you're familiar, J.R.R. Tolkien, or is it Tolkien? I don't know. When I was young, it used to be Token, and the L wasn't pronounced. Now everyone says Tolkien. So my guests will correct me. But he's if you know, I'm a big fan, and a lot of people are fans of Middle Earth and whatnot. And for many years, the figure of Tolkien, and his world have either been under attack or people are trying to appropriate them, and sometimes both, because his world is a popular and influential concept. And most recently, this happened, and I'm going to be reading it to you. Oh, man, just this cat, dude. I'm going to be reading it to you very soon, but the most recent attack on him came out in Vox, which I don't even know what Vox is, but apparently that matters. And the only reason I'm citing it is because it is most recent, and it really underscores and highlights all the issues that we will be discussing. But before that, let me introduce my guest. His name is Dr. Timothy, and he goes by Tim Furnish. And he's an Islamic scholar, PhD in Islamic studies, Islamic history, I believe, and he can tell us when he comes on. But why I wanted him to join me is an interesting story, because a long, long time ago, when we first met, it was at this organization, which I don't even know if it's still alive, called ASMIA, which I believe stood for the Association for the Study of the Middle East and Africa. And I think it was headed by Bernard Lewis. And he was invited, and we didn't know each other, but we were both invited to present papers and give talks. This is, I think, maybe he'll remember, maybe 2010, 11. And we did, and we met, he and I, and we were just talking shop, talking Middle East Islam. And then before we knew it, we both found out we're Tolkien fans. And then all of a sudden we stopped talking about Islam. And since then we just talk Tolkien. And that's kind of amusing. So, and he can, he can share his thoughts. But so Timothy Furnish, here's one of his books, Holiest Wars, which I've had in my library for a long time because they came out early. Tim's one of these guys who actually was a scholar about Islam before 9/11. A whole crop became experts after 9/11. He was there, and he was publishing and writing and talking about these matters, which is why I respect him way before, because he actually had an intrinsic interest and studied it before it was a political topic. But today, he's not going to be talking to us about Islam. Today, he's going to be talking about things like this. So this is another book he wrote, High Towers and Strong Places, A Political History of Middle Earth. So as you can see, the man knows his stuff and is very appropriate for this particular topic today. So let me bring him on. And without further ado, here is Timothy Furnish. Hey, Tim, how you doing? And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and whatever thoughts you want to share?
Yeah. Hey, Ray, I think it was 2011, but I'm at the age where I'm starting to forget things.
Me too.
But I remember I first saw you, real quick, Middle East stuff, before we go to the important stuff, Middle Earth.
Sure.
I saw you on C-SPAN talking about your Al-Qaeda reader. And I don't remember who was interviewing you, but
yeah,
I
it was
watched that with my wife going, I don't know who that is interviewing Raymond Ibrahim, but that guy's a jackass.
He was a famous guy. Lawrence Wright.
No,
Lawrence Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reviewed one of his books for Middle East Quarterly. I didn't like his book either.
Yeah. That's why he was famous at the time, because he was saying all the right things, the politically correct things.
Right. The John Esposito approach. Okay, I'm getting
exactly.
too far afield here.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, thank you. You that was just an excellent, very gracious introduction. Thank you. And let me mention, by the way, that I actually have a contract with Wargate. I don't know if you follow hard military sci-fi any, but Raymond, I have to recommend to you the Forgotten Ruin books. The Forgotten Ruins are described as Tolkien meets shock and awe.
Okay, I'm writing this down because I'm always looking for stuff like this.
There's like 9 of them. Rangers thrust 10,000 years into the future, and they're fighting dragons and orcs, and it's It sounds really stupid, but it is a hell of a lot of fun.
You
Anyway,
mean it has a token? Here's my problem. I've
yes,
always had this problem where like I love Token, and I'm always desperately looking for something different, something like it, and I'm always left disappointed.
disappointed.
And you know, someone actually, I think on YouTube recommended a book to me, and I was skeptical, but I got it. It was a short book. It's called the Broken Sword. It was
Oh
actually pretty
yeah,
good. It was
yeah, I
actually pretty
remember
good.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I
usually when
remember
people recommend things, I'm like, I try it and it doesn't work. But
why
I'll give
read
that a shot.
why read epigones when you can read Tolkien, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember reading the Sword of Shannara books. Do you remember those?
I didn't read them, but I know the name.
Yeah, I read through them all when I was like in college, just because I was so hungry for some Tolkien stuff, and it was like, oh, this is like two-dimensional. But anyway, no, that's very gracious, thank you. But I want to tell Wargate, I actually am under contract. If I could ever get my stuff together, I'm sitting here behind the computer here. You can't see in front of me are about 17. Every book Tolkien wrote is sitting there marked. I am 33,000 words into a military history of Middle Earth.
Ooh,
I'm 33,000 words into
well,
it.
that's
I got
solid.
about another
That's half a book.
70 or 80,000 to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you told me you were, you know, along
I'm
with
plugging
this
away
one, you
on
were
it,
doing
but
another one.
yeah, but not to sound like a whiner, but I wound up having 6 surgeries in 2004. That sort of set me back a little bit.
Yeah, I'll do it. Sorry to
But
hear that.
thank God I'm very healthy now, so I'm very thankful and
Nice.
healthy. So I'm going to get back to that. I'm under contract to do it, and they're also going to bring back out the political history Middle Earth book.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
yeah, so we're working on getting that done because the one that you have is the one that was originally published by O'Loris out of Toronto, who shortly after my book came out went belly up. Now I don't know if that was cause and effect or not, but there's some wonderful illustrations in that book, as you can see. Some by
Yeah,
Anki
it's a great book. I liked
Yeah.
it. I bought it. Yeah.
Anki Eisman, who's I believe a Norwegian artist, and then there's also another fellow whose name I can't remember right now who did the maps for me. I don't have any rights to any of those illustrations. I just have rights to the text. So we're trying to figure out a way to do some different, because that book really needs maps. When you're talking about the different elf kingdoms of the First Age and all that sort of stuff. A lot of people I think are familiar, especially from the movies, with the map of Middle Earth, but they're not familiar with First and Second Age. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Here's
Yeah,
some nice
she's
pictures.
wonderful, but I don't have rights to any of that stuff. So I just have to we have to find some different artists or find something we can do. But anyway, no, great. Thank you.
Okay. So let's let's get into the token business. And I guess I don't know where to start. I was going to start by reading this, reading that article. That's, again, I just find it very interesting. It's almost like this love-hate kind of passive-aggressive thing going on with Token, which is kind of like, for either he's a racist and a xenophobe and a misogynist, or more recently, it's almost like this. It's almost like in the beginning, the left, and I use these terms very loosely because I don't like them, but let's say the left and the right for simplicity's sake. But the left kind of hated him, didn't like him. Anyone who likes Token is a racist. And then it's almost like they realize that no, he's not going away. So we need to let's appropriate him to ourselves and make him ours. And I think, and we'll get into that. I think that the rings of power, that's what that's all about. Obviously, yeah. And now, and the article I'll be reading is the same sort of thing. It's this is a person who's very obviously leftist, and they're attacking the right. And they're trying to tell the right, no, you got it all wrong. Token is kind of on our side. Token's woke, right? And they make clever arguments, and they engage in second-rate sophistry at best. And we'll dissect it. But let me ask you this, before we get into it, why does Token? I mean, why is he the world that he created? I even told you once, a guy like me, I'm an Egyptian Coptic immigrant. I don't have any natural innate affinity to the world of Nordic fantasy land of Token, but I've loved it my whole life. And I know there's a lot of other people similarly who don't have a European ancestry. And that's why the book is translated all around the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so what is it about that world that, Token created that is just so appealing that, if it crosses cultures and divides and generations, and that's why now the left wants to appropriate it and use it for its service. So what do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think that the two big reasons would be one, that the characters are so well developed. The sort of caricature that the left likes to throw out there, especially when they're comparing, for instance, the ones we've seen in recent years a lot have been comparing Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones.
Hmm.
And they're like, well, you know, Game of Thrones is realistic, and you've got people doing bad things and having sex and stuff. Like, what was the famous description? I forgot who said it, that Game of Thrones is Lord of the Rings if Hugh Hefner had written it.
Man,
People,
that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, I watched the first season of Game of Thrones, and after they killed Sean Bean, I didn't want to watch it anymore. Who was like the only noble character in the whole thing, right? I forget.
Well, that's the thing. Like, on the one hand, I think what Game of Thrones kind of its realistic appeal is like a lot of people die. On the other, which is realistic, yeah, even heroes die, right? On the other hand, it's like kind of he went overboard,
right?
It's like
right.
everyone gets just like
it's like
killed.
He's trying to be the anti-Tolkien, I think, in some ways.
Good luck.
You know, and also he's come out recently, and he's, you know, there was recently, not too long ago, some article where some interview where he criticized Tolkien for bringing Gandalf back and stuff, and I'm like, okay, but I think in terms of that comparison, first of all, it's a caricature, because and the caricature is that Tolkien's characters, as opposed to Game of Thrones characters who are multidimensional, Tolkien's characters are all like good or evil. They're two-dimensional. I'm like, well, that tells me you haven't actually read the books, because Denethor is an extremely complex character. Boromir is an extremely complex character. And if you've read the Silmarillion, Fëanor, and a lot of the elves are not all sweetness and like kissy, nice people. Sometimes they're real bastards. And so if you have read Lord of the Rings, you realize that and the Númenóreans, are there any more conflicted people than the Númenóreans? You know, and the thing that I find very interesting about Tolkien while I'm thinking about this is I find that humans in Tolkien, of course, he refers to them as men. Men are, I think, they have the greatest range. I mean, elves are usually good, but not always. Dwarves, you're never quite sure. Hobbits are always nice people. They're hardly ever bad hobbits, except for the Lobelia, stealing the silverware. But men are like either capable of great, huge, heroic acts like Huron or Aragorn, or, you know, or they are like total just reprobates like our Pharazôn turned out to be. Anyway,
I got it. And then, you know, you said something I just want to comment about, which is, you're right about they are complex, but this reminds me of something amusing. Back when I was in grad school, I think I had English course, English literature, and we were assigned to write a paper and a book review, and I think I chose Tolkien, and the teacher kind of like, you know, it was this woman, and she just looks at me kind of like, you know, you're smart and you do good papers, and you know, I almost like, I looked up to you, you're intelligent, why are you doing Tolkien? That's like for children.
Yeah, well, she hadn't read it either.
I mean, so that's definitely a thing that's out there, and I just felt like at the time I was kind of like a little embarrassed, you know, this is in my 20s, and I was like, yeah, maybe she has a point, you know, I still did it anyway, but so the other thing about go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, where I was going with that, I was being a bit long-winded, excuse me, was that Tolkien's characters are so well developed, and they are very complex. They are complex. Now, there's some two-dimensional characters. I'm like, we don't get a whole lot out of Legolas, okay? Legolas, yeah, Tolkien even says in his letters, of all the Fellowship, Legolas accomplished the least. I mean, he's kind of almost like a placeholder elf, if you will.
But he's a heartthrob in the Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I know, Orlando Bloom. Yeah, skating on an orc shield down the stairs.
And now, remind me if I'm wrong, if I'm right, but I mean, in the book, he's not this super. I mean, he's obviously, elves are very super powerful, kind of compared to men, at least skill wise with a bow and arrow. But like, he doesn't like kill. You know, Oliphants left and right by himself and all that sort of thing, right? Yeah.
No, that's Peter Jackson.
Okay,
but I think one is that Tolkien's characters are so well developed, and he even says in one of his letters, somebody had criticized him for that, for his characters being so super heroic, and he says almost verbatim something like, I have not created anyone or any human characters or any men that are beyond the scope of what people can really do, which I thought was interesting. So that shows
that's it. You're hitting on it right now, I think. Yeah.
Tolkien had a very, very, I mean, he knew the capability of sin that humans are doing, and we could talk about the Númenóreans later as classic examples of that. But he also knew how noble and good men can be. So I think that's one side of it, and the other side is that it's Western civilization and just sort of told in a different way. I mean, the Middle Earth, and he says this in the letters, Middle Earth is Europe. It's our Earth. It's not another planet. It's our Earth. It's a different time period. He basically says it's kind of like ancient history, because if you look at one of his letters, he talks about you can date the fall of Barad-dûr to about 4000 BC. So,
so that's the Tower of Babel.
yeah, basically, more or less. Yeah.
Right,
so he anchors it in our world and the things that happen, and it's clearly, it's Western civilization, and there are bad and good people in Western civilization, but Middle Earth and Beleriand and Numenor are Western civilization, and he basically talks about how good it can be. Although, again, as basically the whole thing is the long struggle. Eventually, it's going to fall. Civilizations rise and fall, and we're now in the 7th age or something. He says, if you're going to try to date ages, but he basically is defending Western civilization, and a lot of that is just very historical. I mean, Harad. I mean, where were the attacks? Who knows better than you about this, right? Where do the attacks come on European Christian civilization? They come from the east and they come from the south.
Well, I was just going to say, if you look at the map of Mordor, it's like the Anatolian Peninsula, basically Turkey.
Yeah, it's the Ottomans.
It's the Ottomans, right?
Which is ironic, though, to go back to what you said earlier, that you probably know this, that Lord of the Rings is wildly popular in Turkey. Turks love Lord of the Rings.
And I think that's okay. So here's, I think, going back to the question I was asking you, and the main, which you just answered, I think it's, Tolkien, he just, he shows the struggles that man and women experience and face, and the hardships, and he shows the flawed characters, the Boromirs or whatever, but he also shows that you can rise above it. He shows the heroic, the epic, okay, the meaningful. And I think that is what is so alluring and inspiring and makes people of all cultures and classes and generations like it. Whereas, there's this in the modern literature today, you have this, the anti-hero, or this idea that, it's not inspiring. Basically, the characters of today's literature, they don't inspire you. They don't make you want to strive for something better, something harder, something, a goal, no matter how hard it is. They're all flawed. They're all weak. It's almost like weakness is venerated and applauded. And so obviously that sort of thing is not appealing, and that's not something that people naturally are going to gravitate to and, like. So I do think that is in many ways the ultimate reason that, and of course, and with it comes that epic style and, the way he writes. And I've been accused, and I think there's some truth to this, but if you read a lot of my books, especially like my history book, Sword and Scimitar and Defenders of the West, and the newest one, even more so, I think because I've read so much Tolkien, I write like him in an archaic tone. I actually, in my last book, even my publishers returned it to me, and they're like, you use the word whence, like from where, too much. We think we should get rid of it. And I was like, no, keep it. All right.
It's like that meme, right? You've seen that meme where, Tolkien takes 4 pages describing a tree, and somebody criticizes, he's like, you know what? I'm going to describe the tree even harder.
Exactly. All right. So
that Office, that's that meme from The Office. Yeah. No,
okay,
I think you're right too. Yeah. It's Boromir. I mean, who cannot like Boromir? I mean, the dude died defending hobbits. It's like, and Theoden. I mean, Theoden is my favorite character, I think, in all of Lord of the Rings.
So while we're at it, we got to get this out of the way. Both of us, I think you and I will agree, we both first and foremost like the books before anything, right?
Yes.
And we haven't had this conversation, but if you are a traditionalist like me, you might be like me. But I've watched the Peter Jackson movies when they came out. I like them. I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy about them, and we can get into why, because there is some woke elements even in his, especially in The Hobbit, where you have an elf and dwarf romance, which I'm sure would make someone like Tolkien cringe, something like that. But as far as I find it kind of funny because a lot of people don't know about these earlier adaptations, which I just love. And I don't know if I like them because I grew up watching them or if they're intrinsically good, but I can say they're definitely a lot closer to the book than the Peter Jackson version. And of course, I'm talking about first the Ralph Bakshi Fellowship of the Ring, which I mean, I see how it's kind of, why people wouldn't like it, etc. But it's like, I don't know. I find it very appealing. And also the, I confuse it, Bankin-Rass or Rankin-Bass. I think it's Rankin-Bass.
Rankin-Bass,
both The Hobbit. And then it's weird. It's like you get The Hobbit, Rankin-Bass, and then there's the Fellowship of the Ring by Bakshi, which really is half the trilogy. It's like the first.
Is that the one that ends with the Battle of Helm's Deep?
Yeah, so basically what they
right?
did is I guess the plan was they were going to make two movies. So it ends basically halfway through the Two Towers,
Yeah.
which is halfway through the trilogy. And then Rankin Bass goes and creates Return of the King. It's almost like they're completing Bakshi's work. It's kind of weird. But what are your thoughts about those adaptations compared to both? On the one hand, the book, I think they're a lot more faithful to the books, but also to the Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those are more faithful to the books. Which was it, Bakshi, that where they like filmed it? They filmed people and then animated them somehow.
Yeah. He used some weird technology at the time where, like the orcs are always running in the
this
darkness.
was 1978 or something, right?
Yeah, but it's pretty good. It's
no, it is. I agree,
Yeah.
and you're exactly right. They're more faithful to the book. I do very much like Jackson, although we can get into the issues with him in a bit. Because I mean, he did an amazing job of the world is so detailed. Have you ever seen how many suits of armor they made, Gondorian armor and
But was that even legit?
armor
I remember when I saw the armor, I was like, is that even part of Middle Earth? Do they wear armor or no?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They do? Okay.
Yeah, they do. There's a whole question about plate versus chainmail, though.
I thought chainmail, maybe not plate,
probably
but okay.
chainmail. Probably not plate armor, but you got to admit that Gondorian armor looks pretty.
No, I love it. Yeah. But the orcs, man, the orcs are like, I guess what I'm saying is when I think of the orcs, I think of the cartoon version, and they're kind of goofy and like, they're just like bumbling around, and it makes sense. They're easy to kill, right? Whereas the movie one, it's like each orc, man, looks like a tank. Like it takes 10 men to take one down, but somehow they still kill them easily.
Yeah, they did a much better job of that in the Fellowship, because there's a difference between orcs and goblins are the same thing, but
Uruk-hai and
goblins are small, and you see that when they get into Moria, all those goblins come after them, and they're all like 4 feet tall. But then later on, and then Jackson just went overboard in The Hobbit with he's turning the orcs into like WWE fighters or something.
Basically.
I mean, that was ludicrous. I mean, of course, that was all CGI. So, but no, back to your question. So yes, those 70 shows were really well done. And one of them also, by the way, you remember one was Bakshi did a movie called Wizards.
Oh yeah, of course.
You remember that?
And also Fire and Ice.
Yeah. It's like a post-apocalyptic kind of thing. But it was done with that same technology. But yes, those are more faithful to the books. But
I just have a nostalgia for them, I guess. And sometimes I see people, they mock them like, oh, look how stupid that was. But being a Gen Xer, I guess,
Well, see, I was in high school when I saw those movies. I think I was a senior in high school.
Me too.
The one with the Hobbit where the elves looked like some sort of like weird woodland creatures. They didn't look like humans. That was
a little
creepy.
And also, I like in the cartoon, the Bakshi, Ralph Bakshi, the Fellowship of the Ring. He makes Aragorn like an American Indian.
He looks like that guy that used to cry when TV went off at night.
I recently watched that video.
That idiot.
But the American Indian, his logic was this.
Pollution. Yeah.
His logic apparently was because Aragorn is a son of Numenarians, and he's like the ancient kind of like most ancient. So I guess in his mind, the way to make that resonate was to get a Native American Indian.
Yeah, that was funny.
All right,
but you're right. Those are more faithful to the books, but I still prefer Peter Jackson.
No, I as a movie, obviously, the Peter Jackson is a lot more entertaining, and a lot of that, of course, has to do with the technology that he had access to. Obviously, I only admire the other ones both for nostalgic reasons, and also I respect that they're more faithful to the books. But as far as entertainment, you got to give it to Peter Jackson. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into the political aspect of everything. So I'm going to now try to pull up one of these articles that I mentioned by Vox, and so I'm going to pull up on the screen, and we can. Yeah, here we go. And I'll also read it.
Okay.
And then I'm going to actually, it's kind of a long one, so I'll read it, and we'll also, here it is. I'm also going to, we can pause and kind of comment. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I think it's maybe only 800 words that I'll be reading. So anyway, here you go. The right is obsessed with Lord of the Rings, but they don't understand it. The bizarre conservative misunderstanding of the Lord of the Rings explained. So here you go again. This is the kind of person who obviously probably despises everything about Tolkien and everything he created. But having seen that, well, Tolkien's not going anywhere, this is the attempt to sort of appropriate it, okay, and say, well, oh, actually, Tolkien's one of our guys. Okay, let me start. And it's by one Constance Grady, and it came out October 31st. All right. Quote, among the many humiliations of being American in the current moment is this. Members of the tech right and the conservative ruling class continually fetishize objects of nerd culture while also displaying a willful inability to grasp the very basic messages those objects are sending. And there you go, right there. There is the innate condescension. We're all being called nerds. So if you like Tolkien, you're a nerd. All right, that's how it starts off. All right, let's continue. While there are certainly worse problems, e.g., white nationalism in the White House, the blazing lack of reading comprehension from people who are allegedly smart does give one pause. Put simply, these people are bad nerds. Probably the text they are most consistently prone to misreading is The Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien's beloved fantasy trilogy deals with the corrupting influence of power and the necessity of death. Yet the right keeps using it as a parable for why powerful people should be given more power and human beings should be immortal. Most recently, Elon Musk posted to his platform X that Tolkien's peaceful hobbits were able to live idyllic lives in the Shire only because, quote, they were protected by the hard men of Gondor, referring to the human kingdom entrenched in battle against Mordor. England, Musk declared, must also ally with hard men, in this case, the far-right anti-Islamic activist Tommy Robinson, to restore its own peace and tranquility. Robinson is currently on trial in the UK, accused of refusing to comply with counter-terrorism police, and says Musk is paying his legal bills. So Tommy Robinson is really the terrorist. Okay. Following Musk's lead, the Department of Homeland Security posted an ICE recruitment ad using a screen grab of Merry, one of the hobbits in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies, well, one of the hobbits in the actual books. Superimposed over the image is a line of Merry's dialogue where he says, quote, there won't be a Shire, Pippin. And then below it, the URL, joinice.gov. All right. The idea here is that the native hobbits represent the civilians of both the US and the UK, and unbeknownst to them, they're being menaced by the forces of evil, Muslim migrants from the Middle East, alleged to be invading both countries. The only way to prevent it, the metaphor implies, is for the hobbits to ally with the, quote, hard men of Gondor, Islamophobic agitators for Musk and masked militias who attack unarmed civilians for the DHS before their way of life is gone completely. However, you do not need to be a deep scholar of the Lord of the Rings, and friends, I am not one, yeah, no, she's not, to understand that this metaphor completely falls apart after a single step back. All right, before we see, how she's going to tell us how it falls apart, what do you think so far of her presentation? Is what she's presenting fair, or is it being misrepresented, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's so freighted with propagandistic language. It's amazing. I mean, the KGB couldn't have done a better job of painting their enemies in an evil First of all, as soon as I read white nationalism in the White House, I just stop reading. Right. I mean, and that was the second paragraph, right?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I would really like a job working for ICE doing their ads, because I got all kinds of Lord of the Rings ideas that would be better than Mary, although Mary's pretty cool.
Let's look at some of these quotes that she's complaining about. So let's see. All right. All right. So most recently, Elon Musk posted to his platform that Tolkien's peaceful hobbits were able to live idyllic lives in the Shire only because they were protected by the hard men of Gondor. Well, isn't that true?
That's exactly what Aragorn says at the Council of Elrond. Or excuse me, Aragorn and Boromir. Boromir says, by our lands, by the blood of our people, are your lands kept safe. That's from the book. Because Gondor abuts Mordor, and everybody else would be kowtowing to Sauron if it wasn't for Gondor. And that what Aragorn says, and I mixed them up for a second there, was Aragorn says, Boromir, you don't know who's protecting the Shire, basically. It's the Rangers of the North. And he says, remember, he says something about Barlaam Butterbur, who's the, the fat innkeeper who only remembers his name because people shouted at him all day. He says, people like that, as well as hobbits, can sleep safely in their bed at night because the Rangers of the North are protecting them with no thanks. So this is exactly what Tolkien says. And she turns it into some Elon fabricated travesty of what Tolkien says. It's exactly what Tolkien says.
Well, just wait to see her rationalization. It gets even worse. So, so the quote, they were protected. This is Elon Musk. They were protected by the hard men of Gondor. Like you said, of course. I mean, this is the proximity. This is like, this is like the Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantium abutting against the Turks and the Muslims. And the people in England don't see Islam because they are the ones who are dealing with it. This is why Eastern Europe developed the way it did. This is why Eastern Europe is still a little wary of Islam, whereas the West isn't. It's the same phenomena. So it's absolutely true. And then we have her other complaint, which is bad. So the Department of Homeland Security posted an ICE recruitment ad using a screen grab of Merry. And Merry does say this thing that one of his lines is, there won't be a Shire Pippin. And then below it, join ICE. So, her point is like, so what is her point? Her point is, of course, well, so let's see if Merry and Pippin and the hobbits were simple and, idyllic farmers, and, they're not fighters. I already, if I recall, and you can correct me, but if I recall when Bilbo and the hobbits talk about their ancestors, what is it, bull roar, the farmers and the wars they engaged in. So even their own hobbit ancestors are militant when it comes to defending their homeland, right? And she's trying to act like, no, it's nobody defends, or if you're a hobbit, you're just peaceful and you let everyone in. So
right. And yeah, exactly. So that was the battle. That was which battle? Oh, that was when Angmar was attacking what was
where he cut his head off like a golf was invented.
Golfimble, yes, he beheaded the orc Golfimble, thereby killing the invasion and creating golf at the same time. Yes. No, but she says something in there about ICE kidnapping civilians right in there, doesn't she, Ray?
She says, she says, okay, the idea here, from the quote of Merry, which is there won't be a Shire Pippin, she writes, the idea here is that the naive hobbits represent the civilians of both the US and the UK, and unbeknownst to them, they're being menaced by the forces of evil. Muslim migrants from the Middle East, alleged to be invading both countries.
Alleged.
Yeah. The only way to prevent it, the metaphor implies, is for the hobbits to ally with the hard men of Gondor, who are Islamophobic agitators for Musk, and masked militias who attack unarmed civilians for the DHS before their way of life is gone completely. I don't know who these masked militias are that are attacking people left and right.
Well, the ICE guys picking people up, and they're wearing masks so they can't be swatted by the gangs. Right. Yeah. So but she's basically saying they're the real problem. The real orcs is ICE, and the people in the government trying to keep the Islamic invaders and the other invaders in hand. They're the real problems.
So let's take a pause. What now? If we could bring Tolkien to today, would he agree?
I don't think so.
Put away the hobbits and Lord of the Rings. I mean, would he agree with the current context and the situation of his homeland, England?
Right.
Okay. And the Muslim migrant issue. And if someone, Elon Musk, used the whole, hard men of Gondor, would he see that as a bad thing, or would he, agree, or what? What do you think?
Well, I would tend to think he would agree. By the way, Tommy Robinson, I believe, was acquitted of that charge that she brings up there. He was recently.
They always cling to whatever they can just to make someone look as bad as they can. Okay. So let me, I am now going to continue reading her. Now we're going to get her actual, explanation, what we don't get. Okay. Let me just pull it up. Okay. All right. Okay. So she continues by saying, okay.
Oh, wait, Ray, can you go back to that one part there real quick? Just let me ask you, where it says, in Tolkien's books, it is not the men of Gondor who turn back the forces of evil.
Yeah. Well, we haven't even gotten there. I'm still going to get there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I know. That's the meaty part. Okay. So we finished off with, her complaining about Pippin and, Merry saying this.
Nice.
And then she goes on to say they're trying to twist it into helping the hard men of Gondor, Islamophobic agitators, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're going to get to the part. However, she says, you do not need to be a deep scholar of the Lord of the Rings, and friends, I am not one, to understand that this metaphor completely falls apart after a single step back. In Tolkien's books, it is not the men of Gondor who turn back the forces of evil and save the Shire. It's those gentle, peaceful hobbits who pull the whole thing off. They're the only species able to carry the one ring of power because they are, by their nature, unambitious. All they want is to live their peaceful bourgeois lives of peace and toast and jam, so they are able to withstand the temptations of the ring and its promises of power, ultimately carrying it far enough to destroy it. The best the men of Gondor can do to help is refuse to ever touch the ring, because they know that if they pick it up, they will not be able to resist the temptation. And I just must opine real quick right now, and then it's over to you for this paragraph, because man, talk about a mouthful. Here's where, I don't know if you know, but one of the things that I often talk about is what I call doormat Christianity. And it's this thing where all the forces that be want you to be if anyone wants you to be a Christian, they want you to be a doormat Christian, including non-Christians. Right. And it's this idea that, you don't do anything, you don't resist, just enjoy your life, sit back and eat your toast and jam. And that's virtuous and that's good. And that's what she's saying right here. So, let me read that again. It's those gentle, peaceful hobbits who pull the whole thing off. They're the only species able to carry the one ring because they are by their nature unambitious. Okay, so let's stop with that word for a second. What are we talking about here? It's one thing, I understand ambition and not being ambitious, but we're talking about protecting your homeland. Yeah. That is not ambition.
And she clearly has not read the books. And maybe we talk about this later, but perhaps one could argue the biggest exclusion that Peter Jackson made from the movies was the scouring of the Shire. The scouring of the Shire is so crucial to the story. For those of you that haven't read the books, real quick, in the movies, the hobbits go back home and just have a few beers, and Sam gets married, and then everyone lives happily ever after, whether it's there or in Valinor. But however, in the books, there's a very important chapter where the hobbits go home, and turns out the defeated Saruman went there with a bunch of thugs and took over the Shire and started cutting down the trees and industrializing. Remember, he was industrializing before it was cool. And the hobbits had to fight against the thugs that he had there. So they had to go back and fight for their own homeland. It's basically sort of a mini version of the whole thing. Whereas Gondor and Rohan are fighting to save all of Middle-earth, the hobbits, based on the abilities that they learned fighting beside the heroes like Aragorn and Éomer, have to go back and fight physically to save their own homeland. So that's clearly a great point. Now, I sort of, and this also, if you remember in The Hobbit, Raymond, this reflects something in The Hobbit that's always driven me nuts, which was at the Council of Elrond, and Aragorn's talking to Galadriel, and he says that stuff about, I found it's the small things that are the best at resisting evil. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, it's the swords of Gondor and Rohan that resist evil. Because look, okay, so she's maybe sort of half right in that it was the hobbits who were the safest people to carry the ring, because they don't really care about power. I mean, Sam put it on briefly there when he had to take it away from Frodo when Frodo got captured, and he had some delusional dream about turning all of Middle-earth into a big garden. That was Sam's biggest dream, was creating a big garden, right? Yeah. So in the sense that they were they're safer to carry the ring than elves or dwarves or men, especially men. However, they wouldn't have got there without the armies of Rohan and Gondor.
That's the point.
Off the armies of Mordor, so they can do that. So she's only sort of half right.
Yeah. I think that's the point. It's, in the end, if you look at the books and the way the narrative unfolds, it's a team effort. So of course, Frodo and Sam have their, they play the pivotal role. They're the ball carriers, right? They're the receivers. They got it from the quarterback, Gandalf or whoever, Bilbo. But there's a whole world going on, and there's the good guys who are fighting with their swords, the hard men, and they're the ones who are making it possible.
Gondor and Rohan are the O-line.
Remember when, after the Battle of Gondor, where Aragorn decides to go up and pressure Mordor so they can be distracted from looking for Frodo. Right. So it is ultimately a team effort. and she's clearly missing that by trying. But the thing that really gets me is that word, they're not ambitious. It's this implication that, to want to protect your homeland, that's ambition. That's not ambition.
Right.
That has nothing to do with ambition.
Is ambition, even ambition in general, is it somehow bad?
Yeah, you're right. I agree. And so here we go. Just to finish it off before we leave this final paragraph, they're the only species, the hobbits, able to carry the one ring of power because they are by their nature unambitious. All they want is to live their peaceful bourgeois lives of tea and toast and jam, so they are able to withstand the temptations of the ring and its promised power, ultimately carrying it far enough to destroy it, which is a fair point. I mean, that is how the hobbits are presented as that's they're not corrupted by power because they don't want that. And then she continues, the best the men of Gondor can do to help is refuse to ever touch the ring because they know that if they pick it up, they will not be able to resist temptation. Well, that's not true. The best they did do is they actually helped by creating this long distraction and, and battling the forces of Mordor to give Frodo the time and the wherewithal to do what he did, right?
Plus, they've been battling the forces of Mordor for 3,000 years.
Yeah. But your point too about, that line, which is Butterbur can do what he can, and including the hobbits, is because of the hard men. I mean, that is so demonstrably true. Imagine if there were no Gondor to stop the orcs, back at that point before the War of the Ring really starts. Would the Shire have been the Shire, or would have been overrun?
Right. And there wouldn't have been, and Sauron would have still had the ring, because who took the ring from Sauron?
Yeah.
The Gondor.
All right, let's go back and finish what she's writing, her nonsense. Pull it out. Here we go. Okay, so she continues by writing. After that part, she continues to translate this into the metaphor, what she's talking about, which is that the hobbits are unambitious. That's why they're good, and the men of Gondor are not. She writes, to translate this into the metaphor, if you're taking Tolkien as your guide and you believe your homeland to be under invasion by the forces of evil, the solution is not to try to consolidate your power, harden your nature, and glory in needless cruelty. Needless cruelty? The solution is to refuse power whenever it is offered to you and to fight from a place of humility. And here we go once again with that just idea of trying to convince people, just don't resist. Come on, be a good Christian. Just let it happen. And why are you fighting back? What do you think?
Yeah. Needless cruelty.
Yeah, needless cruelty. So again, who else? I mean, who defending your homeland, not wanting illegals, people who are here illegally, including those who engage in criminal activity. That's needless cruelty. Meanwhile, around the world, anyone who does that, and they all do it, is not considered needlessly cruel. But okay.
Yeah, I wonder if she'd apply that to the Christians of Nigeria, for instance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another topic.
Yeah, I mean, again, within the bounds of Tolkien, more proof she hasn't read the books. No one in Tolkien, from Gondor or anywhere else from the West, engages in needless cruelty. Not one of them. After the War of the Ring,
not even Boromir, who's the bad guy,
No, but even he does. But after the War of the Ring, Aragorn becomes king, is King of Lesser, and like the leaders of the defeated Haradrim from the south and the Easterlings are brought before him. And what does he do? He pardons them.
Yeah,
he pardons them. He says, okay. And then, although it does say in the appendix there are later wars, because Tolkien says that Rohan and Gondor have to participate together because there are still bad guys, even with Sauron gone. But he pardons, he frees the slaves of Mordor, and there's no needless cruelty. If anything, like Baragon, Baragon is the guy that abandons his post in order to save Faramir when Denethor is trying to burn him alive, which of course gets all left out of the books. Out of the movies, excuse me, and he was supposed to be, he was part of the Tower Guard, and he was supposed to, by law, I believe he was supposed to be put to death for abandoning the Citadel. But Aragorn did what? Aragorn forgave him and said, "You're banished, but you get to go hang out with Faramir, who's going to be the Prince of Ithilien."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think these are just kind of code words. Needless cruelty. It's once again trying to reinforce this idea in Western people that if you do anything protective of your
Yeah.
culture, your heritage, your homeland, you're evil and you're
You're
needlessly cruel.
needlessly cruel.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like it doesn't in any way, shape, or form, as you just showed, even affect the book at all.
Yeah.
It's not
No
even
one,
part of
no,
it.
yeah.
And even
No Western.
in the current analogy that she's trying to apply it to, which is Western people defending their land against whatever Muslims, how are they being needlessly
Right.
cruel?
Ipso facto, needlessly cruel if you stand up at all. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's
Yeah,
just it's sort of like that. You see this meme on social media, or you'll see this practice, and people made memes out of it, like people that are non-Christians will try to
mhm.
guilt Christians and say, I don't believe in your Christ or anything that he preaches, but I don't like your policy, so I'm going to try to make you feel guilty about being a Christian to see if I can
Yeah,
change your
yeah.
behavior.
It's so widespread and diffuse and ubiquitous to the point that nobody catches it. I mean, you and I see it, but so many people just fall for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. I think we're almost done with her nonsense.
Oh, thank
Uh,
God.
okay, so to translate this into the metaphor, okay, we read that. All right. The DHS, she continues, and Musk aren't the only members of the new right to use token to justify their actions. As David French told Today Explained, I guess it's a magazine, earlier this fall, Vice President J.D. Vance has described The Lord of the Rings as fundamental to his journey into conservatism, so much so that he named his venture capital firm Narya after one of Tolkien's magic rings. Vance's mentor, Peter Thiel, named his own venture capital firm Mithril after one of Tolkien's magic metals. Another one of Thiel's companies, an AI platform Trump is using to surveil and monitor Americans, is named after Palantir, a magical artifact that the Lord of the Rings villain Sauron uses to monitor and deceive the people of Middle Earth. Actually, this part now gets kind of silly because she continues by saying the darkness of that parallel is more or less par for the course. She goes on to say this Steel guy wants to be an elf. He says, why can't we be elves? Because he wants to be immortal. So now she's complaining that I guess Lord of the Rings fans want to be immortal and kind of like. So I think that's whether he believes that or not. I don't think that is even germane to our topic because 99.999% of Tolkien fans are not trying to be immortal elves. So let me just wrap it up. And none of these, she continues, none of these messages are difficult to understand. They are surface level. Children in middle school regularly pull them out of these books without difficulty. She means her interpretation, which we just looked at. Yet, for some reason, a group of incredibly powerful men who pride themselves on their own intelligence and who also consider Tolkien's philosophy to be fundamental to their worldview seem to be having a lot of trouble. The Lord of the Rings actually has a pretty decent metaphor for what happens when powerful people decide to willfully ignore the wisdom of people they claim to respect and conclude that the only way they can be of service to the world is by chasing power for themselves. That's what happens to Saruman the wizard, and he ends up invading the Shire himself. The men of Gondor don't stop him at all. So deep and profound. I don't even know what her point is. What do you
I don't know
think?
what she does other than bitching. Raymond, I'm sorry, my brain shut down after you uttered the words David French. I have to reboot here.
All right. I will summarize. So basically, yeah, you're right. Actually, there's not. It's just again trying to say, hey, there's all these powerful right-wing men trying to appropriate Tolkien for their purposes, but we all know, a child knows that what Tolkien is really saying is that just be a doormat and be passive and just go eat your jam and be a hobbit and lay around and everything will go well for you. I mean, that's I think her message. That's what she wants people to walk away with. Okay. So I think that was a perfect example of the sort of nonsense that's being foisted on people and how Tolkien keeps appearing in politics. And as you and I know, we both talked about this, but even before, I only used this particular report because it was relatively new, October 31st. But you and I have seen a lot of this sort of thing. And like I said, it's almost like first it started off by, oh, Tolkien is stupid and oh, Tolkien is racist, Tolkien is xenophobe, Tolkien is misogynist. And then it's kind of like, well, okay, Tolkien's not going anywhere. So now let's say, no, Tolkien is actually woke. And that's what that particular piece that I just quoted from. So what are your thoughts? And I think you probably know this more, like of the earlier both attacks and appropriations of Tolkien. What have you seen, and what can be learned from that?
Yeah, I started researching the political history of Middle Earth back around, I don't know, 2001, 2002, and I've still got a shelf over there. I must have 200 articles that I went through. And it was interesting because as you can go through the years, this sort of analysis, this approach that she uses here ramps up. I mean, first you see sort of sprinkles of it, in different Tolkien journals and English journals and stuff, and then eventually it gets to the point where that begins to predominate by the time we get to, I don't know, 2011, 2012 or something. It's ridiculous. And, like a lot of pernicious stuff, where's it come from? It ultimately comes from academia, right? It's postmodern Foucaultian garbage. Mm-hmm. Anything that's positive or that people like, particularly about Western civilization, has to be degraded. To go back to what we started about talking initially here, a lot of people like Tolkien because he's basically talking about Western civilization and how there are good things about it. And it's, the famous line from the movie, there's some things worth fighting for, Mr. Frodo. But this woman and, these sorts of articles are basically like, no, there's not. There's nothing worth fighting for. In fact, it should all be torn down because it's racist and sexist. And, orcs are really black people. I mean, just absurd stuff. And,
all right, let's talk about this real quick.
Yeah.
The racial elements. Okay, because this is deep. There's so many layers that we can discuss here. So I will first tell you how I see things. Okay. I think by today's standards, which are ultra touchy, we're walking on eggshells. Yeah, Tolkien was a racist because everyone in his time was, by again these extreme standards that we have, was a racist. I think. I think we have this idea that the racist was Hitler, and then everyone else thought like 21st century Western people. No, people saw colors, people saw race. That doesn't mean you hated someone. It doesn't mean you thought they were inferior. It's just they thought and understood, these are different races and different groups. It's very natural. I think till today, outside the West, most people are racist in the sense that, of course, they see color, of course, they see race, and it does influence how they think. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that because some people will tell you, oh, he's a horrible racist, and of course the way the creatures and his beings come out. Yeah, I can see that. It seems to be that there's a tendency, the lighter and the fairer. The elves are kind of like these angelic, especially even amongst the elves. If I recall, in the Silmarillion, you have the Noldor, in the middle, and then you have the Vanyar. And they're really above. They're very almost like divine, extra divine than the rest. And they're really described as they're all blonde and blue. And that's all fine to me. That never bothers. And at the same time, of course, you have the dark elves who are not necessarily, I know they're not dark as in dark skin, which is another interesting topic because that's what Ring of Powers tries to say, that dark elves are dark skin, they're black elves, right? So what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, they're dark elves because they're the elves that never went to Valinor, so they never saw the light of the two trees. Right. So a better word would be sort of like, I don't know, unenlightened elves, if you will. Yeah, they're not dark, like they're
It's not a physical characteristic.
Right.
That they're dark. Exactly. Right.
And in Tolkien, darkness, it means that you follow evil. It doesn't mean that you have dark skin. There are black Númenóreans.
Yeah. Wait, really? Like black skin?
Yeah, the black Númenóreans were the Númenóreans that followed Sauron. And in fact,
were they black skinned?
No, they were not black skinned.
Okay, they're called black because they follow the bad guy. Okay, yeah.
Sauron.
Right.
The Dark Lord.
Right.
And Sauron's not evil because he's, spent too much time in the sun.
No, he was actually beautiful, right? I mean, the way he's described originally.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the whole thing. The whole darkness and light thing in Tolkien is almost entirely good versus evil. Which side are you on? Yeah, the black Númenóreans. In fact, no one knows exactly who all the 9 Nazgul were. The
Witch King. Yeah.
The Witch King.
We know him.
Some of them, one of them is an Easterling, described Khamul as an Easterling, but the other ones, many of them were black Númenóreans. The mouth of Sauron is a black Númenórean, a descendant of Númenóreans that decided to fall away and go so far as to follow Sauron.
In other words, Tolkien uses the terms black and white in the traditional sense, kind of black, which is almost like, biblical, almost like light is good, darkness is evil. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Which has nothing to do with skin pigmentation, right?
Right. And he does. he does talk about like especially when you get toward the end of the Lord of the Rings, when you're talking about the battles where Minas Tirith is under siege and Gondor is being attacked by the people from Harad, which is the south. Harad is basically North Africa, and they're being attacked by Easterlings and the Easterlings are described sometimes. And there's a whole history of Easterling attacks on Gondor if you read the appendix and going back into the earlier Third Age. The Easterlings are kind of described almost like Mongols. They're described sometimes as swarthy, and their descriptions are basically as nomads. There's a huge group of people that attacked Gondor earlier in the Third Age, about 500 years before Lord of the Rings.
Speaking of real quick, because something I've always wanted to clarify, like allegorically wise, so he has the Southrons and he has the Easterlings, the men of Harad and so forth. Right. So who represents what? You're telling me the Easterlings are like Asiatic Mongols?
Yeah, they're like nomads. They're like Central Asian nomads.
Like Turks, maybe.
Turks, Mongols,
okay,
Huns.
Nomads. Okay, yeah. And the Southrons, would they be more like Saracens and Moors or black?
Saracens, yeah. The North Africans, the Moors, and who invaded the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're described somewhat like that. And so, but the thing is, they aren't evil.
But here's the thing, even because so he describes them like that, and let's say he presents them as the bad guys, but in the end, he's ultimately following reality because those were the bad guys.
Those were the people attacking,
and that's how they looked.
Yes. Yeah. And again, they aren't evil because they have swarthy skin or they spent time in the desert. They're evil because mostly they've been misled by Sauron.
Right. Yeah. That's what he's, which is like, in the Christian analogy, people misled by Satan,
Yes. And then, or if you will, they've been misled by Muhammad. And so,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
But they are misled. They aren't intrinsically evil, and it has nothing to do with their skin color. Yeah. Tolkien is talking about geographical realities. They have the Haradrim or the Southrons are darker because it's described as a desert land. It's basically North Africa. So, but these sorts of, you have to actually read the books to understand this.
Yeah. And even, you see this among the elves, like the Noldor are darker than the Vanyar, but they're still just as good,
Right.
So it's not like he says, it's not like there's a gradation by color. Once you start moving down the color, you're a bad guy. No. Okay. So anyway, so that's the racism issue. And so what do you think of the other charges of like sexism and, he's a misogynist? Again, I would say, no, he just saw the world and he saw the role of men and women the way every man and every woman, in fact, of his generation saw it. So there's nothing spectacular about the way he saw it. He just was kind of duplicating reality that everyone understood. Right.
Right. And he's, again, we were talking about this offline earlier. In terms of chronology, Tolkien basically says in his letters that this is that Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and all of his works are set in the Earth's past. It's the far distant past. Well, if you know anything about military history, women didn't fight in armies. Why do women not fight in armies? Because they don't have as much muscle mass. They don't have this thing called testosterone. And they have this really pesky issue called getting pregnant. So women,
but Rings of Power, Galadriel's like tough and cool. Are you saying that's wrong?
No, I'm saying that. However, keep in mind that people always say, "Well, Galadriel." But think about Eowyn. Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That Mary Sue stuff, it's just such garbage.
Actually, let's stop here real quick about this female thing because I got to share with you my biggest pet peeve, which is in the Ring of Galadriel. I'm sorry, not Ring of Power, vis-a-vis Galadriel and others. But this issue, so in Tolkien, we have, I guess, the greatest most women in Tolkien are like women; they're normal. And you have Arwen, who's sort of like a princess, and aloof and distant, not a warrior. And here's another thing. So, for example, Ralph Bakshi, in his, if you recall, and this always not Ralph Bakshi. In the book, when Strider Aragorn is leading the hobbits to Rivendell, and they're being chased by the Dark Riders, and then I think it's Glorfindel, an elf, who finds him. But in Tolkien's adaptation, it's Arwen, the elf maiden. And she comes and she puts her sword under Aragorn's chin because she caught him off guard. And like even with even with Arwen, so this is what I mean by like even Jackson's version kind of annoys me a little bit. But so that sort of thing, and that's very mild, Jackson's version. But now we go to Rings of Power, and now and now you got get off, man. It's cat, sorry.
Is that is that one of the cats of Queen Beruthiel?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Lost Tales.
That's real inside baseball there. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the Lost Tales, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the so again, my pet peeve is it's not just the Tolkien stuff. It's kind of like I've had enough of every historical movie. I mean, they do it in modern movies. That's one thing, and that's ridiculous. But I'm tired of seeing women with swords fighting in the middle of a battle. And every movie that does that or show just ruins it for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I'm so historically attuned, and I know that's completely ridiculous. But when they show you a movie, oh, Vikings are fighting, and then all of a sudden some woman comes and she's like,
it beats everybody up, and she's 5 foot nothing. As they said about Rudy, 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing. It's like
why though? Oh, well, I know why, because it's social engineering. They're trying to destroy the natural hierarchy, but it's kind of like.
I think that first started with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was one of my favorite shows of all time. But, Buffy at least had supernatural power. Yeah, I just get tired of that, especially as a guy who spent some time in the 101st Airborne. And, I was in the military intelligence unit.
Were there women fighting side by side?
There were women in our unit because we had an MI unit, okay? So I was an interrogator, but we also had the electronic warfare people, and that was mostly women. So probably in my battalion, my 311th MI battalion, there were probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 women. Every Wednesday.
Were they fighters?
No, they were intercept people. They would intercept Arabic electronic communications.
Okay, yeah. That's fine. That makes absolute sense, yeah.
But it's the 101st Airborne, so theoretically they were supposed to be able to fight if they had to. But every Wednesday we would do a 10-mile road march because our colonel was a madman. And every Wednesday, every woman would fall out of the road march, except for one lieutenant she had gone to West Point and she was squared away and she was in really good shape and she could at least make 10-mile runs. But literally we would go, I know I sound like the get off my lawn character, but every Wednesday we would go on these 10-mile road marches, and about 5 miles in, the women would start falling out. And we weren't even carrying heavy packs. I think it was 35-pound packs. And since I was the guy at the time that lifted weights, I had to carry the M60, which was a lot of fun. But they literally, the sergeant major would literally come back to us and tell us, guys, to pick up, to divvy up the stuff these women were carrying, because if the women all fell out, we would have to run an extra couple of miles because the colonel would be pissed off. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an E5 at the time. She's an E5. We're the same rank. We're getting paid the same. Why am I literally carrying her weight? Because she shouldn't have been in that unit, because it's ridiculous. Women in combat is one of the stupidest things that anybody ever came up with. And anyway, yeah.
No, I agree with you. I agree. Yeah.
With like a believable character, like, okay, Éowyn, I can understand the thing with Éowyn. Éowyn's a very interesting character, and I think they did a really good job with her in the movies. But keep in mind that really, however, it really wasn't Éowyn that killed the Witch King. It was Mary, because Mary had a Númenórean blade. So that's what really killed the Witch King, because as Tolkien says, it dissolved the sinews which knit his unseen flesh together. I can't believe I remembered that. I've only read the books,
but that goes against the idea that it's always like a team thing.
Right. There's a team thing. You're right. Yeah.
Just like the hobbits seem to be the ones who are taking care of it. Behind them are the men of Gondor, and just like it's Éowyn who seems to be the one. Behind her's a hobbit.
But it's like, yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. They but Tolkien is set in like the ancient. It's supposed to be the ancient past of our world. Women didn't fight then. I'm sorry, Amazons are a myth. So, I mean,
yeah, actually, what do you have to say about the Amazons? Because a lot of people throw that, and I think the only one who recorded is Herodotus, who, of course, recorded a lot of stuff that people call mythology. But that's their big thing. Oh, the Amazons, these warriors. What are you talking about? They existed and they fought, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think?
Okay,
I just can't. It's for the reasons that you said. Here's what people don't get. It's not about, I'm man, you're woman, I'm better than you. It's men are bigger, they are stronger, they have aggression vis-a-vis testosterone, which I think men have 10 times more than women. So it's kind of like, it makes sense. And this is why you see, in sports, the like a world-class female whatever basketball player or whatever sport, and they put them up against the typical high school boys, and they win. The boys.
Remember some years ago, the high school team from Texas beat the women's soccer or soccer team. Yeah, it's like, I remember teaching a history class once, and we were talking about this. We were talking about why there weren't why ancient militaries didn't have women, and this one girl in the back of my class goes, "We can do anything you can do," and I said, "Well, then why is there an NBA and a WNBA?"
Yeah, seriously,
crickets. I mean, my younger son plays college football. He's an offensive lineman. He's a bit bigger than I am. There's a reason there are no girls playing college football.
Okay? Can you imagine a college football game where the offensive line of one team is all women and the defensive line is all men? I wonder how that would go.
I mean, unless they were all Rosie O'Donnell, they might have a chance. But even that, I have my doubts. So, but the thing is, there are good female characters in Tolkien. Eowyn, Orwyn, Galadriel,
and they're feminine. Galadriel. That's the point. They're realistic because they are female. And that's, by the way, a pet peeve. I have a lot of these, and I'm always rambling, but I can't stand how the word feminine, like, to me, feminine is good, right? It's good for a woman to be feminine. And yet we have the word feminist, and people conflate them. But to me, isn't feminist like the antithesis of femininity? Or do I not understand this?
It's like Rush Limbaugh said, the term feminism was developed in order to give fat, ugly women a place at the table.
By saying they're feminine. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So, we've talked about the questions of race and misogyny in Tolkien, and so now what about multiculturalism? We talked a little bit about that.
Hey, let me say one other thing real quick. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Orcs.
Yeah.
But we talked about the different kind of men. We didn't talk about orcs, and I was just going to say, a lot of these leftist commentators and analysts have tried to make the orcs into like some stand-in for Africans or something. No, orcs
migrants.
Orcs are monsters. They're the things that when you're a kid, they tell you might be hiding under your bed. I mean, they're monsters. Okay. And they don't stand in for any people. They are a species of monsters, basically.
You mean you're not supposed to be like, oh, I'm not going to judge them, and if I treat them good, they'll treat me good, and we'll learn to live in kumbaya? Is that what you're saying?
Orc rights. I mean, there's got to be an orc rights lawyer out there somewhere. Or there would be if there were orcs. Yeah.
All right. So no, that you're right about the orcs. Well, if we want to get to the nitty gritty, and I think it's actually interesting. The orcs are ruined elves, right? Ruined life forms. Is that right?
There are several theories on that, my friend.
Well, elucidate, please.
Yeah, Tolkien went back and forth on that. If you read the Morgoth's Ring,
I have it, and I read it on your recommendation like over a decade ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably don't read it regularly, but like most normal people,
one time only.
Yeah. But in Morgoth's Ring, he has an entire chapter on that, and he kind of went back and forth. Yes, the predominant theory, and the one that is they have Saruman.
I'm listening to you. I'm going to go grab it. Actually, it's right here. I'm listening.
Okay.
Continue.
It's the one they have Saruman mouthed in I believe the Two Towers, or maybe it was Fellowship. I can't remember. Was that yes? The orcs were elves that were twisted and turned into something evil. He also has. There are two other theories. One is that orcs were some kind of beast. They basically were like an animal that Sauron raised them to either Morgoth or Sauron, probably Morgoth. Actually, if you don't know, folks watching or listening, Morgoth is the original Dark Lord. Sauron used to work for him. Morgoth is basically Satan, if you will. And basically, the first theory is that they're ruined elves, and that's the one most people are aware of because that's the one that shows up in the movies. Yeah. The second one is that they were some kind of creature or beast that Sauron or Morgoth basically raised to enough level where they could take basic commands and there was some rudimentary intelligence and they could speak.
Well, that's I think kind of like the dragons, right? Like they're like Maier, right?
Yeah,
kind of like Sauron.
who have been embodied. Yes, yes. But the third thing with orcs, however, and Tolkien says in Morgoth's Ring that this is the most likely theory, is that they were actually men. They're a debased form of men. Because remember, what are Uruk-hai? Uruk-hai are a cross between men and orcs. And if men and orcs would have to be the same species in order to interbreed.
Well, that makes sense too, because I never think of orcs as being immortal, which elves are, right?
They aren't, right. They're right. They're not.
They're more like men.
Yeah, yeah. And so he actually says in Morgoth's Ring in that chapter that's probably the most likely theory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there goes my memory.
No, that's very obscure, you know.
Yeah.
Only us really super nerds know that one, Ray.
Yeah. I'm like nerd level 2 or 3. I submit to your nerdiness level 1. Okay. So all right, let's so what do you think of the Rings of Power? Now, how does the Rings of we're keeping it very relevant because the Rings of Power, in my opinion, what was it? Amazon, that Bezos guy, and I guess it was like millions or billions of dollars was spent on it, and et cetera, et cetera. And I already knew it was going to be disappointing, but and the whole thing, man, is like message after messaging, again, girl power. Oh, again, all the good guys are dark skinned, all the evil guys are white. And the good guys who are white are pansies. They're beta males who just get pushed around and slapped around by their women, including the dwarf. Where he's married to this, rotund black woman who yells at him and tells he cries and weeps all the time, and she tells him to man up. And it's kind of like, man, thanks for ruining it.
Sorry, unless like somebody died that was a battle comrade. I mean, that might be the only time he might weep. Even then he'd do it while killing orcs.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, they just ruin it. I mean, the dwarves of old, the way they're described, they're like stone. They are made of stone.
How do you have black orcs or dwarves if they all live underground? I would think they would decide to not have very dark pigment, would they?
Yeah, where's the sun, right?
Here,
you got to have it. Go ahead.
I told you this before. I watched the first season. I wrote an article for the stream on it. Here's the capsule description that tells you really all you need to know about the Rings of Power. When they're showing Numenor and they're showing Ar-Pharazôn is the guy that ultimately becomes the last king of Numenor, and
he's the megalomaniac that challenges the gods.
But he takes an army to Middle Earth, and Sauron just gives up because Sauron's like, I got no chance against these guys. They're too powerful. And
he enslaves him and takes him, and then Sauron, beguiles him and acts like his slave, but manipulates him.
Turns most of the Numenorians to the worship of Morgoth.
Right.
And they start practicing human sacrifice. It's horrible. And then, God destroys. It's the Atlantis myth retold, basically.
Yeah.
But all you need to know about this is in Rings of Power. Well, let me back up a little bit. The problem develops in Numenor because the Numenorians live to be hundreds of years old, but they want to be elves. They want to live forever. And
they're like Elon Musk. No, they're like that Peter Thiel guy. Yeah.
The Valar, who are the demigods of Tolkien under Eru, the one god, the Valar sent emissaries, says, no, you can't live forever. You're not elves. We don't have the right to tell you that. We blessed you with long life. You're the most powerful race of men ever. You're the most powerful empire in Middle Earth, but you can't live forever. You just can't. Well, they want to do it anyway. So the whole thing is they want what they can't have, which is why they ultimately started attacking Valinor. But in Rings of Power, oh no, that's not what it was about. There was they had a scene in Rings of Power in the first season where basically, you know why they were mad at the elves? The elves were coming to Numenor and taking their jobs. I kid you not. I'm surprised they didn't put MAGA hats on them. It's so incredibly stupid.
Does this stuff resonate with people? I mean, like you and I and people like us, and I heard it was a bust, right? Rings of Power, and I hope so.
I don't know. But Bezos must still be pumping money in because there's another season coming out.
There is?
Yeah.
And I guess it's just made for, maybe younger generations because, the stupefaction process and it's been going on.
For Vox writers.
It's like, I mean, how is it appealing to watch something like that?
I don't know.
There isn't a single male heroic character. Okay. So this goes back to why Tolkien is why we find him appealing, because he captures reality. It may be hard to achieve. It may be
Yeah.
something to aspire to. Okay, and that actually is what makes it even more noble, because it's something to look up to.
Yeah.
But when you watch, like, let's say Ring of Power, what on earth is there that will make you as a viewer want to aspire to anything?
Nothing.
It's so pathetic. You know,
It really is aimed at women and girls, and it's aimed at liberal women and
or
girls.
men who act like women and girls, right?
Democrats, in other words.
All right, let me take a few real quick some super chats here. And all right. Okay, let me get my glasses on because I don't know what's going on here. Bryant became a YouTube member. Hey, hi, Bryant. Okay. Rogue Disciple. I'd love a video game set during the Second Age. The Second Age never gets a lot of play, does it?
No,
the Second Age is actually the Rings of Power.
Rings of Power, but they just ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. Play as Noldor and Numenorians like in the opening of the Fellowship. Yeah, but they ruined it for us.
Yeah.
The Second Age business. I actually, to be honest with you, my all-time favorite is the First Age.
Yeah.
I don't know why I find the First Age very appealing. It's so when Melkor / Morgoth is running amok and he's fighting with the Valar, and the song of the Ainur and whatnot. Yeah. I've always found that the most appealing. The Second Age is interesting too. It's what Akabeleth or whatever. It's very short. And that's the funny thing, because these guys, like,
there's a lot more in this one.
The Fall of Numenor. You know what? I thought about getting that, but then I thought it was just is it just pure appendices, or is it actually a narrative? I have the Fall of Gondolin, and I liked it.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you think?
It's both. I mean, I like it. It's really it's my primary source really for the stuff I'm doing on Numenor. But First Age, Fingolfin fighting Morgoth.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to I'm surprised you mentioned that scene of Fingolfin fighting Morgoth, and Morgoth came, and the rumor of his feet in the subterranean. You know what? I'm going to pull it up and read it, because I think when people tell me, why are you writing like Tolkien? I think when I read that excerpt, it kind of reminds me of how I sort of write. So I've been influenced. Let me go grab it while you you set the stage.
Yeah, that's a great scene. Yeah, Fingolfin was the brother of Fëanor, who created the Silmarils and basically was responsible for the elves coming back to Middle Earth and Noldor because they weren't supposed to. But Morgoth swiped the Silmarils, so Fëanor led a bunch of them back. And he got killed. Fingolfin was his brother, and Fingolfin and a number of elf kingdoms were set up in what was in Beleriand, west of Middle Earth, to fight Morgoth. And they tried it for a long time, and they had a couple.
Hey, I found it.
That's just an awesome scene.
Yeah, I'm going to read it now. So it's in the chapter which I remembered, of the ruin of Beleriand. Okay, and so let me read it. Just like you said, Morgoth is the Lucifer figure, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he starts off as Melkor, and then he becomes Morgoth, the black foe, right? The dark foe in their language.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, the brother of Fëanor, Fingolfin, who is the High King, right, of Noldor.
Yes.
I think Fëanor's dead by now. So he comes. So there's a full-on war going on, and Morgoth has unleashed his foes. And Fingolfin's kind of had enough, and he just just takes off alone and runs and goes to Angband, right? And that's where Morgoth is in the north. Yeah. And he calls him out.
There, yeah.
Yeah, and he calls him out to single combat, right? So let me read the quote. So let me see. Thus he came alone to Angband's gates, Fingolfin, and he sounded his horn and smote once more upon the brazen doors, and challenged Morgoth to come forth to single combat, and Morgoth came. That was the last time in those wars that he passed the doors of his stronghold, Morgoth, and it is said that he took not the challenge willingly. For though his might was greatest of all things in this world, alone of the Valar he knew fear. The Valar are the gods, essentially. But he could not now deny the challenge before the face of his captains, for the rocks rang with the shrill music of Fingolfin's horn, and his voice came keen and clear down into the depths of Angband. And Fingolfin named Morgoth Craven and Lord of Slaves. Therefore Morgoth came, climbing slowly from his subterranean throne, and the rumor of his feet was like thunder underground. And he issued forth clad in black armor. And he stood before the king like a tower, iron-crowned, and his vast shield, sable unblazoned, cast a shadow over him like a storm cloud. But Fingolfin gleamed beneath it as a star, for his mail was overlaid with silver, and his blue shield was set with crystals, and he drew his sword Ringel that glittered like ice. Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and it swung it down like a bolt of thunder. Now, interesting fun fact, as you know, Grond is the name of the battering ram in that's used against Gondor, right? In the Return of the King, which is named after the hammer of Morgoth, right? So I'll continue. Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and swung it down like a bolt of thunder. But Fingolfin sprang aside, and Grond rent a mighty pit in the earth, whence smoke and fire darted. Many times Morgoth essayed to smite him, and each time Fingolfin leapt away, as a lightning shoots from under a dark cloud. And he wounded Morgoth with 7 wounds, and 7 times did Morgoth give a cry of anguish, whereat the hosts of Angbat fell upon their faces in dismay. I love it. And the cries echoed in the Northlands. But at the last the king grew weary, and Morgoth bore down his shield upon him. Thrice was he crushed to his knees, and thrice arose again and bore up his broken shield and stricken helm. But the earth was all rent and pitted about him, and he stumbled and fell backward before the foot of Morgoth. And Morgoth set his left foot upon his neck, and the weight of it was like a fallen hill. Yet with his last and desperate stroke, Fingolfin hewed the foot with Ringel, and the blood gushed forth black and smoking, and filled the pits of Grond. Thus died Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old. The orcs made no boast of that duel at the gate, neither do the elves sing of it, for their sorrow is too deep. Now, isn't that just, who writes like that now, right? I mean,
you.
Yeah, exactly. From reading this sort of thing, I've started to kind of like, and I see it especially in my last book, The Two Swords of Christ, I kind of, because my editor has pulled it out and they're like, what are you doing? Why are you using all these archaic words and terms and whatnot? But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that scene, because that's one of the most epic scenes, I think.
That's amazing.
Right. And I didn't know you thought that. I mean, I always thought it was me that thought that, and I'm glad to see. So that is a popular, in fact, I did pull it up, and let me see if I can find it. There's actually a drawing. There's actually lots of drawings of that scene, artwork. I found one. Let me pull it up. Okay, yeah, here it is. All right, let's see. Yeah, there it is. There's Morgoth and Fingolfin, and you're right. As I read, he was clad in plate armor. I think Fingolfin was.
That's is that Naismith? That's probably Naismith art. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't see. John Howe.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. He's the other. Yeah. The only one that compares to that, Raymond, is the death of Huron, or not the death, the capture of Huron.
Yeah. Wait, I'm confusing Huron and Turin.
Huron was Turin's father. Huron's the
one. Oh, yeah. And, I know the picture you're talking about, where he's on the throne and he's seeing his son and his family being cursed.
By Morgoth, they have him take him alive, but before that, he kills 70 trolls with a double-bladed axe.
Yeah.
And
Morgoth sets him on a pinnacle and makes him see the curse that he's casting on his family and how it unfolds. That's it's great stuff, all that stuff, and what's, I think it's great again because it just it invokes certain realistic motifs. A lot of, as you know, what Tolkien came up with was very much historically based. We already touched upon, for example, the siege of Gondor that everyone sees. Well, that's the siege of Constantinople, right? By the Turks. It's very reminiscent. So it's all real stuff, and it's not like he's making it up. And I think that's why it resonates so much with people.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, on
Go
that,
ahead.
real quick, Tolkien. I mean, Peter Jackson did a great job, I thought. If you notice, Minas Tirith, the palace in Minas Tirith is basically Byzantine style architecture.
Yeah, I did
which
notice
is
that.
really cool.
Yeah, that's a little shout out. Okay, let's see a couple more super chats. Okay. Kevin, got my signed copy. You exceeded all expectations. Also happy to hear that you're a Tolkien fan. This channel couldn't get any better. I remember you, Kevin. I recently kind of did I kind of for donations, you can get an advanced copy of my book, The Two Swords of Christ, and he was one of them. But he wanted me not to mail it right away. He wanted me to wait a few days, which I did. So anyway, I'm very glad that he got it. Okay, and R. Kitsune, hello, Raymond. Are you Coptic or evangelical? I'll say I'm Coptic by heritage and ethnicity, and I'm not evangelical by profession. How's that? All right. Rogue disciple.
Evangelical, small e.
Yeah. I'll take small e. Yeah, that's the Gospels, right? The good
Right.
news. But big E, all right. Rogue disciple, you two should listen to Nightfall in Middle Earth by metal band Blind Guardian. Concept album based on Silmarillion. Wow, it rocks.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah. That's thanks for
Check
that.
out.
Okay, and Dejan, the Witch King of Angmar is Muhammad.
Works for me.
I won't argue with you. Dejan, the orcs are the Janissaries. They used to be regular Christian elves. Now they fight their own kind. That's an interesting parallel, actually.
The elf thing. Yeah, that works
Yeah,
for everyone.
because that is what the orcs are. I mean, if you go with the first theory, which is that
Right.
they're ruined, life forms and then appropriated, turned evil, and then set against their former kin, I guess that sort of makes sense.
Right.
So what else? What else do you think? If we're going to wrap it up, what are your final thoughts, kind of on everything? Just again, I just find it very interesting that I wonder how Tolkien would see this. I mean, he started off, as he's just a bookish. Yeah, he's a bookish Oxford Don. Most of his time was spent grading papers. As The Hobbit starts off with him just being bored and writing, in a hole in the ground.
On an exam book, I believe, on the back of an exam booklet.
Yeah. And so that's the guy he is. He's not a political guy, but at the same time, this is interesting. He went to war. He was in World War I. And I didn't watch it, man, because I just knew it was going to ruin it. But, they made a movie about him when he was young, which I assume.
I've never seen that. Yeah.
You haven't seen it, right?
I've not seen that.
Because I just imagine it's going to be stupid, but it's supposed to be about him when he was young, and I guess when he went to the war and whatnot. And I'm sure they're going to botch that and put some leftist woke spin upon it. But my point is the fact that this guy was a military man and he went to war. I think he does believe that you need the hard men of Gondor to protect, the simple hobbits and the butterbirds of the world, right?
Yep, of course. I mean, what's he say? He says in one of his letters, by the time he was 22, all but one of his close friends was dead.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that's going to have an impact on you, obviously.
Yeah. He was in World War II, and I think was he injured? I don't think he was gassed, but he was injured.
World War I, right?
World War. Did I say two? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
World War II. Yeah. The British did not give up when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. Sorry. World War I. I don't know. Sorry, I need more coffee.
So, okay, speaking of World War II, what was his views? Was he was he a pacifist? Was he telling people, hey, let's just go eat our biscuits and relax and not be ambitious, or what?
Clearly not. A lot of those letters are, his son was in the Royal Air Force, and he was writing letters back and forth to Christopher Tolkien.
Yeah.
And talking about that and how much he hated the Nazis and yeah, of course he's not. Anyone that reads The Lord of the Rings and tries to argue he was a pacifist doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, he does say, and he puts in the mouth of Faramir, who, by the way, he also says in his letters that if there's any character in the book that's him, it's Faramir.
Really interesting.
Yeah. He does have Faramir say, that whole contraposition between Faramir and Boromir. Boromir is the scholar, is the soldier, probably didn't read a whole lot of books in his life. He just liked to fight, liked to drink. He's a good guy, charismatic.
Mother's proud of him.
Yeah, it's like score. His dad wasn't.
Faramir has daddy issues. Okay.
Right. But Faramir was sort of the scholar soldier. And Faramir, that line from Faramir is often quoted. You see that I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, but only that which it defends. Right. The city of the men of Gondor. So, Tolkien clearly didn't like war because he'd been in it, but he knew that there are things worse than war. And it's when somebody like Sauron, or the human equivalent of a Sauron, or his hordes take over, that's worse than war.
No, that's a really great way to put it. In other words, Tolkien is basically, war is an evil necessity as needed. And unlike all these people, like this woman we read and quoted, who don't know anything about anything, especially war, he was there. He experienced it, and he can tell you war is bad. It's something I don't want part of. But he could also still say war is something that is sometimes needed to preserve the peaceful, idyllic, biscuit-eating hobbit lifestyle and Butterbird's lifestyle. So that's definitely a very important part. And I think that's, the ultimate thing is, I often wonder, what do you think? I often wonder about this. Like, what do you think of a guy like Tolkien? I think he was born, 1897, maybe, I think. And I know he died the year I was born, 1973.
Right.
What was it he was born?
I think it was 1896. Is that right?
96. Okay. No, it's all right. Something like that.
1890s.
Yeah. And, he was born in South Africa. A lot of people don't know that. So he has an interesting background, and a lot of people don't realize, his father died very early, but his mother also died pretty early. I think he was 9 or 10, and he and his brother were raised by a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about, and it's not like, in the movies, and they probably did this in the movie. Who knows? And if it was a movie, they're going to show you how he was raised by a Catholic priest. He tolerated it, resented it, but then saw the light once he got, away from the Catholic priest and broke away from that dogma. But actually quite the opposite, because throughout his whole life, he was very ardently Catholic, and, the whole him and C.S. Lewis and their debates and whatnot. So again, that's also very telling, but I often wonder, if you can bring him to life now, what do you think? You tell me, what do you think he would say about our current society and its values, its priorities, its culture in general?
He would probably say that either Sauron or Saruman won. Because especially with England, we're not as far gone here.
Yeah. Let's focus on England. Actually, it's his homeland. I'm sure he would have much to say.
I saw a chart recently where they have arrested more people for social media posts than Vladimir Putin has.
Isn't that crazy?
Like far more.
But he's the evil Eastern dictator, right?
Right. Tolkien would just be aghast at what's gone on in his home country, and he basically probably would say that Sharky, which is what the hobbits in the Scouring of the Shire call Saruman is one. It's just, I think he would be greatly, greatly distressed at what's going on in his homeland.
What do you think he would think about the representation of his work, even if it's in his appendices, as captured by the Rings of Power?
He would probably pronounce very horrible anathemas upon Jeff Bezos and Amazon.
Really?
He would probably call for a crusade against them, although he doesn't like crusades. But Rings of Power is just a joke. It's just a money grab. It's Rings of Power is Tolkien for people that haven't read Tolkien or really don't like Tolkien. Basically, I kid you not, Rings of Power is Tolkien for people like that Vox writer. That's what Rings of Power is.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's just an appropriation of something that's meaningful and that's liked by the right, meaning normal people. So how can we take it and ruin it?
Why can't the left just let us have some things? Like, what? We want to go to the gym. That's alt-right. We want to read Tolkien. It's alt-right. I don't know. Is brushing your teeth alt-right?
I want to be a man. That's alt-right. I want to be a woman. Like a real woman wants to be a woman. That's alt-right.
It's like, can we just have something that we're allowed to enjoy, or you have to try to ruin everything, you leftists?
Well, let me ask you, moving on from Tolkien, because we're dealing with these important topics. How do you think all this is going to unfold eventually. Just this whole right, left, and let me give you my theory about left and right, because I think it's important, and it's my own theory. I've never heard anyone talk like this, but what they call the ultra right, to me is like a normal human being who's not compromised. And I say that because all the characteristics that are attributed to ultra right actually are mainstream amongst all the people of the world outside of the West, right? What is it? Patriotism, thinking my culture, my language, my way of life. You got to do it my way in my country. Okay, that's the world, right? But for some reason in the West, anyone who thinks that way is this weird creature. He's monstrous. He's a racist. He's all that sort of thing. Right. Okay, and so to me, that's the ultra right, which means I think if you're ultra right, you're a normal person. Okay, well, now in as much as you go leftwards, so you have the right, you have the middle, and you have the left, right? So ultra right is ultra right. Now, in as much as you go leftwards up until you get to the middle, that's a compromise. You're being compromised now. Okay, so now the kind of like moderate Republican who you can't differentiate in any way, shape, or form from a leftist, really, because other than that, they believe in conservative fiscal policy. Okay, nothing about morality, right? So and to me, it's kind of like a abnegation of truth. Mm-hmm. And until you get to the middle. So to me, neutral means nihilism. It means I don't believe in anything, right? Right. You're right, I don't care. But then that doesn't really last long, because nihilism eventually has to be filled with something. Then it gets filled with stupidity and madness. And now you're moving left of the middle, okay, yes, until you get to ultra left, where you're just completely insane because your logic has been filled with stupidity. So to me, that is what the paradigm left and right means. It doesn't, but I think to most people, it means something like right means I'm a Republican, and left means I'm a Democrat. And, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that paradigm went out the window probably about 20 or 30 years ago. It's the chart. You've seen the chart. I mean, Elon's put it on X before. It's the chart where you're like, here's somebody in the middle, here's somebody in the right, here's somebody in the left. And then it goes way over this way. And then all of a sudden everything's left. And if you are not everything on the left, you're somehow ultra right, like you're saying. I'm like, no, I haven't moved. I mean, like, Barack Obama used to be against gay marriage, and the Democrats used to be against abortion. And now all of a sudden those things are, if you don't support those, you're an ultra right person. I'm like, well, so Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, when they ran for president, are basically, Nazis. I mean, that's how far it shifted.
I just saw a video. I'm actually making a video about it, and it was on PBS. It's still on PBS, I think, but it's a video like it's two videos. One's from the 1950s and one's from the 60s. The ones from the 50s is a warning to boys from homosexuals. And it's literally throughout the whole video, it's about how homosexuality is a mental illness and a sickness. And, this guy might want to be your friend, an older man, and you got to watch out because he's sick in the head because he's a homosexual. And then the next video is a detective speaking again in front of a packed auditorium of little kids in high school or whatever. And he's again warning them against homosexuality and how it's monstrous. And I think to myself, that was America in the 50s and 60s. I mean, these guys weren't weird. They were mainstream. Okay. These were the authorities.
Right.
And now, you fast forward, and it's kind of like the guys that they were warning them against. It's not even homosexuals. Now you got men dressed as women and monsters and freaks sitting holding children. So the question is, so going to your point, it's like, it's not that we changed. It's just they completely changed, the line and gone extreme on one side. And it's kind of like, I'm not moving with you. So I'm the weird guy. I'm the bad guy. It's really you.
It's like Reagan said years ago, I didn't leave the Democrat Party. They left me. And they've not just left people, but they became so open-minded, their brains fell out. And,
exactly.
To bring this back to Tolkien, I would say, to rehash what you asked me earlier, I would think Tolkien today would probably be considered a Christian nationalist, which, since Christian,
which is the worst thing possible, right?
Worst possible thing, although I'm not sure that anybody that talks about it can actually define what Christian nationalism is. It basically is just someone that you don't like that's a Christian that doesn't keep their mouth shut in public. That's a Christian nationalist.
Yeah. But somehow they try to conflate it with race, because to be a Christian nationalist means you're a racist.
But that always cracks me up, because there's 400 million Christians in Africa. Are they all white supremacists? I guess they are. They just don't know.
And they would be Christian nationalists in the context of their nations,
the African Christians would be happy to be Christian nationalists.
Yeah.
It would stop Muslims from killing them.
They would actually be happy to live under white Christian nationalists. You know,
be safer than what you get in Nigeria and
Yeah.
Ethiopia and
Yeah.
and other places now.
Yeah, this left business and so let's wrap it up. Let's finalize it. Thanks for joining me, Tim. This was good. This is good stuff. And we'll have to do another stream about both our actual expertises, which is Islam.
Okay.
I know you're the eschatology expert, and maybe we'll do another stream about Islam and eschatology, etc.
Okay.
Because that's always a fun topic. Like I said on your book, which I read right here, Holiest Wars. When did you write this book, by the way?
Oh Lord, Ray, that came out in 2005. That's
2005.
That's a book version of my doctoral dissertation. So you're one of like 4 people that actually read it. So thank you.
It's actually a really good book and very
thank you.
insightful.
It's pretty boring, but
I mean, all academic books can be on the dry side, but it's eye-opening. And like I said, I like the fact that you were doing this stuff before it was popular. I mean, to me, there's a dividing line. Like I was also, I wrote my MA thesis about about Islam and its battles with Christendom, and I was working on it in 2000.
Yeah.
So right before 9/11. But and then all of a sudden, as you know, after 2001, all of a sudden all these experts popped up, right? Everyone knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So that's why when I find someone who's before that, I kind of like it.
Yeah. All the people that were Soviet analysts and experts suddenly became Islamic experts. I never
Exactly.
knew quite how that happened, but yeah.
All right. So closing thoughts about the token phenomena, either the attacks on or the appropriation of. And, again, I think the the most important and telling aspect is just how appealing the world of Tolkien is. And I'm sure a lot of people who don't know, who haven't read it or who only know the movie may not really appreciate what we're saying here. But he really does capture a world. It's fantasy, it's fiction, it's, not real. I get it. But it's, on the other hand, it has a sort of grounding in reality more than, more than what we're told is reality by the media. You know what I mean? And I think that's why people are so, they find it so alluring and enticing, and hence why the attacks and the appropriation and whatnot. But it's pretty telling what we just saw, and what you just said too, which is I think he would be a Christian nationalist token in the current climate. And can you and meanwhile, we got people who are trying to say, no, he was woke and he was telling people you should be kind of a lazy hobbit and just lay around and don't be ambitious. That's just the crazy, bad Gondorians and whatnot.
That's right. Right. Those hard alt-right guys down in Minas Tirith, they just, what do they know? Yeah. Just to rehash a little bit, Tolkien is an inspiration to many people. And again, not just Westerners. I'm talking about Turks. I know I've seen where Koreans love it. Lots of people love it because, again, though it's primarily really a retelling of Western civilization in many ways. It also the characters and the values of heroism, like you were talking about in particular, those resonate with people across cultures because heroism is something that all humans are capable of, not just Western Christians and Western Europeans. So that really resonates with people. And these Vox writers and the BBC. Remember a few years ago, BBC's like, oh, the alt-right medieval, they're people, white nationalists are trying to, they don't understand Tolkien. Oh, give me a break. We understand Tolkien far better than you do. And these nattering nabobs are not going to be able to degrade Tolkien because he's too great and he's too popular. And so they can try, but it's just not going to work.
One of the aspects, as you were talking, that comes to my mind that really, Tolkien captures that it's very hard to find nowadays in literature. And I think it's a self-sacrificial aspect, almost like a martyrdom. And that's captured in all of them. It's in Frodo, it's in Gandalf, it's in Aragorn. It's this idea that, what's that?
Theoden, Boromir.
Theoden, yeah. It's in a lot of them, but it's this idea that, life is tough. And rather than my being, oh, boo-hoo, let me take the easy route. No, I confront it and I suffer, and it's for a greater good. Right. And I think that is the ultimate appeal, right?
Greater love hath no man than what? Give up his life for his fellow man.
Exactly.
That's exactly what they're doing.
And I think modern literature does not have that. So let's go back to Game of Thrones, right? Yeah, it's popular and all that, but who's the real altruistic hero? Everyone is in it for it's all sex, it's all power, it's all
Maybe Ned
greed.
Stark, who Sean Bean played, but then they killed him off quickly.
Yeah, exactly. We couldn't have that guy, so let's
Right.
get rid of
He's
him
too
real
good.
quick.
Get
Yeah.
rid of him.
But I think that's also by design. It's kind of to tell people, hey, don't even think.
Yeah.
That's not an option. Nobody self-sacrifices. Nobody does that. You're stupid to think that. Everyone thinks this way. Everyone is self-serving and cynical and just in it for power. That's how movies are, right? That's how shows are, even books, I suppose, right? So I think that is the power on the one hand, and that's also why they dismiss him as being so simple,
Right.
as I told you when I was in college. Because there's good and evil, and the guys who are good work hard and try to do the right thing and sacrifice. And so apparently that's not nuanced enough, because in the current paradigm, nobody sacrifices anything. Everyone's cynical. Everyone is egotistical. Everyone is this and that. So I do think that is the ultimate appeal of Tolkien. And I like the fact that so many people, you're talking about Turks and whatnot, who liked the book. And it was a real struggle to me when I was very young, because I just thought, like, it looked weird. Like, why am I, a guy like me, why am I so interested in this? It wasn't just like, okay, I'm reading it for fun. I was like all into it. I was one of those guys, kind of like you, maybe not to your degree, but checking out the maps and really studying it and whatnot. And I felt like, yeah, this isn't your heritage, man. You shouldn't be. But I just really, really liked it. And and I do think it's because Tolkien, above and beyond his own particular culture and heritage and civilization, really touched on something human, right? And that's the ultimate interest and the ultimate appeal.
Yep, exactly.
All right, Tim, thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for joining us. I think this was a good, when I first started my YouTube channel, one of the first things I said is it's not going to be limited to Islam. I'm going to start branching out. So in many ways, this is the first one where I've kind of done that. Yeah. So thanks for joining me and easing it for me, because I'm not used to just sitting here, and I can talk about Islam all day, but talking about Tolkien, it was good to have someone to bounce ideas with. So thanks for joining me, Tim.
It's been an honor. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah. And I'll hit you up about, we'll do another stream about Islamic eschatology, your actual, real formal, education and background. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Bye, Tim. Bye, everyone. See you again. Take care.